Hello everyone, this is Evan from BlazikenTCG, and today guys, I'm going to be doing a tier list for the Worlds 2023 format. So, right here I have pretty much all the decks that are good in this format, and we're going to be ranking them on this tier list, going into Worlds 2023. So let me know in the comments if you are going to be there. I will not be there, unfortunately. I'm going to be trying to get my invite this year in 2024. But let me know if you're going, and if you are, then I wish you the best of luck. But yeah, anyways, we have all the decks here, so first of all, let's get into what all the different tiers mean. So S tier, these are going to be the best decks in the format. You either need to be playing one of these decks or at least have a game plan against it, and if you don't have at least a 50-50 matchup against all of these decks, then you're probably not going to be very successful. You can't really afford to take a bad matchup to one of these, because you will likely play multiple of these decks, just because a lot of times at Worlds people just want to play a safe deck. They either want to play like a safe deck or a very risky deck, and most people just want to play a safe deck, so a lot of people just play the S tier decks. A tier, these are going to be very popular, and you need to have a game plan against it, and it might even be worth teching for if you have a bad matchup to one of these. They will see play, but they might not be as popular as S tier, either because of consistency issues or maybe they're just not as powerful, but these might actually have a better chance of winning the event than S tier decks, since more people will have counters to the S tier decks. B tier, these decks will still be popular, and you should at least have a game plan against these decks. I wouldn't recommend teching for one of these decks that's in the B tier, because you wouldn't be surprised to play against one, but at the same time, you wouldn't be surprised to not play against one. So the B tier decks, they will still see play, but maybe just not as much play as these. C tier, these are going to be kind of more rogue decks that people will play, but they're not going to be popular, and I would not at all consider teching for one of these, because, like I said, they won't be as popular, they might not be as powerful or as consistent, but a lot of these are going to be like straight counter decks that are meant to just counter the top tier decks. D tier, these are going to be like decks that aren't too great, and I wouldn't recommend playing them. And then F tier, these are just going to be downright bad decks. So let's get right into the video. So I'm just going to go in order. So starting off with Arc Aerodactyl, we're going to put this in C tier. I think that Arceus Aerodactyl could do good. I just don't think it's, well, maybe not. I don't know about Arceus Aerodactyl. I mean, to be honest, I don't know. It just doesn't seem to be very good. Like, you don't have a great matchup against Gardevoir. Like, you might have an okay matchup against the Mirror and Lugia and Lost Fox, but I just don't think you have a good matchup against Gardevoir, and Gardevoir is definitely going to be in the S tier. So Arceus Aerodactyl is C tier. I personally wouldn't play it, but I'm sure someone will play it, and I'm pretty sure there was even one that got like top 32 in AIC. So it has been shown that it can perform well. I just don't know if it will at Worlds. Arcdura, I think, is definitely a solid A tier deck. So this is, I'd assume, to be the Arceus Duraludon Umbreon deck. I think you kind of have a solid matchup against everything. Like, the Umbreon gives you a okay matchup to Gardevoir, and then Duraludon gives you a nice matchup against, like, Lugia, Lost Box, and stuff of that nature. And then Umbreon's also really good against Mew, so I think that you have a very, very good matchup spread with this deck. I think this deck can be very, very good. Issue is its consistency might be what holds it back a bit, because Arceus Duraludon Umbreon can sometimes brick. If you don't find Arceus V turn 1, or if you don't find Energy Attachment turn 1, then the game's pretty much over for you. So I think some players might choose not to play this, just because the games you lose, it feels like there's nothing you could have done to win them, just because, like, you lose games just because of a dead hand sometimes. Alright, Arceus Pikachu, so this is just like Arceus Pile. I think is definitely a solid B tier. Well, Yeah, I think this would be like considered the Arceus Vulpix Pikachu, and I think this one would also be Arceus Vulpix Pikachu. So I think that they are probably actually going to be C tier. I think they're better than Arceus Aerodactyl, but I think they're still going to be Rogue just because, like, whenever you're playing an Arceus file, you're opting to have, like, very good matchups into some of the better decks. So, like, there's a few specific decks that you're opting to have a very good matchup into, but some of the more Rogue decks, you might not have a bad you might not have a good matchup against, and there's also going to be some decks that you just can't beat. Like, for instance, I don't think you can beat Arceus Duraludon, but you might be able to build it in a way that you could... So basically, like, with Arceus Pile, you have to build it in a way that you beat, like, 3 or 4 decks, but there's some decks that you won't beat, if that makes sense. So I think that's what's going to hold it back a bit, but I think Arc Pile could still be very, very good. Arc Team is as solid as always. It's an A tier deck. It's a very solid, very consistent deck. I just don't know about its Gardevoir matchup, but I definitely do think it is still an A tier deck. Gardevoir and Lugia might not be terribly good matchups, but I think that you definitely have a good matchup into everything else, I would say. And it's just so consistent. So there will be games that you just win just because you're much more consistent than your opponent. So I think it is definitely A tier. Art Goo is really bad right now. If you're going to play Goodra, play the Lost Zone Goodra. But Goodra I already think is really bad right now just because of Gardevoir. You have a really bad Gardevoir matchup. But Arceus Goodra I don't see a reason at all to play. Arc Rayquaza I think is also probably F tier. I know that some people have tried Arceus Rayquaza in online tourneys. I just don't think you can beat either Gardevoir or Lost Box with it. So I think it's going to have to stay in F tier. Arc Drago is probably going to be C tier as well. As we saw, Drake did win NAIC in the juniors division with Arceus Regidrago. And I think that might have just... I think that it's definitely good because it won NAIC. I just don't know if many of the top players will play Arceus Regidrago 2 Worlds because I think it could do very good, but like I said, a lot of people will most likely want to go with safer decks, and Arceus Regidrago is kind of risky to play because of its consistency. Arceus Umbreon, so this would be like the Arceus Umbreon Pikachu deck that Michael Catron top-8'd with. This will be B tier. I think it is definitely still as solid as always. I think that you're still going to be having a solid matchup spread with it. But once again, like all Arceus decks, the consistency is what kind of holds it back. So I think that people will play it and people will do good with it. I just don't know if it can win the entire tournament. Now, Turbo Chien-Pao, so this is like the one that uses Arceus V-Star and has like cross-switcher canceling cologne plays. Probably a B tier deck. Similarly to NAIC, I feel like it's a good deck, but a lot of the top players probably won't play it just because of it's just I just don't think a lot of the top players will play Chien-Pao. I think they'll probably go with like more consistent decks because this deck sometimes does brick and you really are just relying on getting those combos online. Then we have Chien-Palkia. I think this is... Alright, so this is the one that plays, like, no Baxcalibur. So, I think that this would definitely be D tier. It got top 32 at NAIC. I just don't see a reason to play it again. I just think Baxcalibur is the much better version to play. Then we have Lost Box with Dragonite, and then I think this is also, like, Turbo Lost Box. I think these are, like, the same deck. Because if you're playing Forest Seal Stone, you're going to be playing Dragonite, and if you're playing Dragonite, you're going to be playing Forest Seal Stone. So I'm just going to consider those as the same deck. It's definitely S tier, though. Turbo Lost Box is still very, very powerful. You have very, very good matchups, but it's not a deck that you want to just pick up the night before the event and start playing. You want to have a lot of practice with this deck because it is definitely the hardest deck in the format to play, and even a lot of top players can sometimes misplay with it. So if you're going to play Turbo Lost Box, definitely make sure you have a lot of practice because it is a very, very hard matchup. And I actually made a Turbo Lost Box matchup guide, so I will link that video in the description if you guys want to check it out if you are considering Turbo Lost Box. I'd highly recommend it. I went over like all the matchups and I gave like a lot of important information on how to play the deck, so definitely go check it out. And then we have the Lost Box Moltres Kyogre deck. I think is probably going to be more rogue. It'll probably be in the C tier. I think that it could be a good deck, but the issue with this deck is that you really don't have a the Kyogre and the Moltres kind of have some anti-synergy because they're both late game attackers. So you're not really doing a whole lot in the early game because all three of your main attackers, Sableye, Kyogre, and Moltres, are all like late game attackers. So I think it's probably C tier. Yeah, we'll put it in C tier for now. I think it could do good, but a lot of people probably are going to play Turbo instead. I think Turbo is definitely the optimal build. Then we have Kofi Giratina, very solid A tier deck. I think Lost Tina is still very powerful. Its consistency is always been a bit of an issue, but now Jet Energy gives you a lot more consistency, and you're still very powerful. Being able to just hit 280 and then have a V-Star that automatically knocks out your opponent's active is very, very good. Lost Goo is... should I put it in C or D tier? I think it's gonna have to be a D tier deck. I'll put it in the high D tier. I think that it just has a very lackluster Guardy and Lost Box matchup. Like, Lost Box you can beat, but a lot of good Lost Box players know how to play against Goodra. And then, like, even Arc Piles, you just have, like, an iffy matchup against. So I think Lost Goo is definitely D tier. I don't think that it's worth playing. If you want to play a Lost Zone deck, Turbo or Giratina or even the Moltres deck are all very good. Single prize Kyogre is going to be B tier. I just don't think it has a good enough matchup against Gardevoir because you're not as fast as the Turbo box. So I think you just don't have as great of a matchup against Gardevoir. Dragonite v Kyogre Lost Box is also going to be B tier. I played this to NAIC and it seems to brick quite a bit, to be honest. It seems less consistent in the opening stages of the game as just Turbo Lost Box. So I think that's definitely... I definitely don't think Dragonite Kyogre Lost Box is going to be the way to go. Sablezard is probably going to be C tier as well. I just don't think that you want to be playing Sablezard into either the Mirror Match, Lugia, or Gardevoir. And those are going to be like the three most popular decks most likely. Skyseal Comfy. I can get around playing the one of Skyseal in the Turbo Lost Box, but I don't see a reason to play just Skyseal Lost Box on its own. Comfy Zamazenta is probably also B tier. Turbo Darkrai, we'll put this in C tier. I think you have a good... well, yeah, we'll put it in there. I think you have a very solid Guardy and Mew matchup. It's just the Lost Box matchup is the one you got to be worried about. Wings, I think, is actually going to be B tier. I think you have a very, very good matchup against, like, Guardy, Lugia, Mew, pretty much everything but Lost Box. And that Lost Box matchup is really what holds Wings back. Fortress, Wotian, that's a really bad deck. Guardy, Klefki, I actually don't see a reason to play Klefki. I think that actually worsens your Lost Box matchup, if anything else. Reversal Guardy is going to be B tier. It's a good deck, but very hard to play and not very popular. Gardevoir with Reversal Energies and then just Basic Energies, I think are both going to be S tier. Guardy just is so consistent and has such good matchups against just about everything on the field. So I think that if you just want a safe deck to play, Guardy is the way to go. Rapid Box is going to be B tier. You have a good Guardy matchup, a good Lost Box matchup, a horrible Lugia matchup. So, yeah, if you're fine with just not having a good Lugia matchup, and even, like, Mew is tough if you're not playing Drapions, which a lot of people have not been playing Drapions or Spiritombs. I think if you're going to play it, you need to play double Drapion just for the Mew matchup, because I do expect Mew to be pretty popular at Worlds. We have Single Strike Urshifu, definitely an A tier deck. Single Strike Urshi is just, or like Single Strike Lugia with the Urshifu, I think is very, very good. I think you need the Urshifu just so you can get around Duraludon, but even Urshifu, sometimes, like, it's still unfavorable. So maybe the way to go is just cut the Urshifu and just play, like, just heavier counts of consistency, which is what this build right here aims to do. So who knows? We'll have to see. I think Urshifu is worth playing, but maybe you should just go for consistency, because Urshifu doesn't fix the matchup that much, because all they have to do is just knock out the Urshifu V. Then we have Colorless Lugia, which I think is probably going to be B tier. Maybe even C tier. Yeah, I think it's C tier. I don't think Colorless Lugia is very good. Like, you have a very good Lost Box matchup, but even, like, Gardevoir and stuff is kind of iffy. Solrock Lunatone is terrible right now. You just don't beat Lost Box at all. Meowscarada is probably... I'll put it in F tier. Sorry, Meowscarada fans. I just don't think any Meowscarada deck is the way to go. I think it's more just like a meme deck. It's a fun deck, but I just don't think it's going to be very good. And DTE Mew doesn't function because of Spiritomb. Fusion Mew, I think, is very good, though. I think Fusion Mew is still very aggressive. It's as powerful as always. And Fusion Mew never really has, like, very convincing matchups. But it's just always so fast, hits hard, and sometimes you can just run away with games just because you set up so much faster than your opponent. Control, I actually don't think is in a bad spot. We'll put that in B tier. I think if Sander or another good control list comes up with a good control deck, then it could definitely be very, very good. Miraidon Flaffy is C tier. People will play it just because a lot of people like the deck, but I just don't think it's very good. You don't win against Lost Box. You don't win against Gardevoir. Regieleki Miraidon is the worst version right now. Palkia Bibarel, I don't see a reason to play Palkia without, like, Jian Pao or something. Palkia Guardy, not great. Block Snorlax Control, like, you're not really trapping anything at all, because Gardevoir decks are currently playing Penny, and then Lugia is playing, like, 2 to 3 Jet Energy, so you're not really trapping anything. Spidops Leafeon, bad. Tinglu we'll put in C tier. I don't think it's a good deck, but a lot of people do think it's good. Ability Lock has always been very strong, but this deck, like, auto-loses to Gardevoir most of the time, unless they just brick. And then even Lost Box, like Turbo Lost Box, can be hard. What is this? Not Jian Pao. Tinkaton, I think his name is. That deck's just not very good. Dialga Magnezone's probably D tier. And then Zorobox, I think, could actually be okay. It's a B tier deck. You just can't really beat Lost Box, but I think you can beat just about everything else. So there you have it, guys. That is my tier list. If you enjoyed this video, please, please, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And there is my Worlds 2023 tier list. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.